I never thought that losing my home would end up meaning losing my son, too. The storm had swallowed everything. Rain poured sideways, shingles ripped off like paper. The roof groaned once, then collapsed. My house, my little refuge, was destroyed in a single furious night. So I did the only thing that made sense. I drove to Tom's. It was nearly midnight when I got there. My windshield wipers squeaked in protest, and the headlights blurred through the rain. I remember sitting there for a full minute before stepping out, just breathing, rehearsing how to say it without sounding desperate. But of course, I was desperate. My house was unlivable. My savings were nearly gone, and my bones had started aching in that deep marrow kind of way that always warned me a cold night was coming. I knocked. The porch light flicked on after a pause, and there he was, my son, taller now, thicker in the shoulders. Same crooked brow that used to furrow when he got nervous about spelling bees. He didn't open the door fully, just leaned on the frame and stared like he wasn't sure if I was real. "Tom," I said, my voice cracking. "The house, it's gone." He blinked. "Gone?" Roof caved in. Everything's soaked. I didn't know where else to go. Behind him, Amanda appeared holding a dish towel. She didn't say anything, just hovered, watching. Tom rubbed the back of his neck.
"Yeah.
That's awful, Mom. But we don't really have the space." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "What?" He shrugged, eyes darting back toward Amanda like he needed backup. "We've got the baby stuff in the guest room now, and Amanda's mom is coming in a few days." Amanda didn't contradict him, just shifted her weight and stared past me into the dark like this wasn't her problem. I looked down at my suitcase still in the trunk, the same one I used when I came to help them after each of the kids was born. The one Amanda called our lucky bag because I always packed something they forgot. "I can just stay for a couple nights," I whispered, "until I figure something out." Tom crossed his arms. "I mean, you could maybe sleep in your car." I stared at him. I searched his face for some sign he was joking, that he'd pull me into a hug and say, "Of course, Mom.
Come in."
You're home." But he didn't. He kept the screen door latched like I was a stranger, like I was selling something. Amanda stepped back inside without a word. The porch light was too bright. I could feel it picking at my flaws, the lines around my mouth, the wet sweater clinging to my chest, the way my shoes squeaked like they didn't belong anywhere. My voice turned small. "Tom, it's me." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "We just can't right now, Mom." So I nodded once, mechanically.
"Okay."
I walked back to the car, sat down, and closed the door gently, like I didn't want to wake a child who wasn't even mine to comfort anymore. The driveway gravel crunched behind me. I didn't turn to see if he watched. I didn't want to know. I sat in silence while the storm pressed its cold weight against the windows. And that was it. That was the moment. No yelling, no betrayal screamed in rage, just 6 soft words that shattered something I didn't know could still break. "We don't have room for you." And the quiet that followed was worse than any storm. The first night in the car, I kept the engine off to save gas. It was freezing. Not the kind that stings, but the kind that settles into your joints like it's moving in for good. My knees ached. My neck stiffened from the angle I twisted in the driver's seat. The parking lot behind the strip mall was empty except for a few delivery trucks that came and went in the early hours. I parked between a dumpster and a broken streetlight, not because it was safe, just because it was hidden. I spread my coat across my legs like a blanket. My breath fogged up the windshield. Every few minutes, I had to wipe it down with a tissue just to see out, just to feel like I still had some control. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but the tears felt too heavy to carry. Instead, I stared at the glove box at the little sticker I put there years ago when the grandkids were toddlers, a sparkly gold star that said, "Awesome." I remember sticking it there when Tom's oldest got potty trained. He was so proud. I kept it up for him. And now it was just a reminder of how small I'd become in their world. My phone buzzed once that night, a text from a neighbor checking in about the storm damage. I didn't respond. What would I say?
"I'm fine."
Just sleeping behind a Dollar Tree. I pulled out the envelope of photos I always kept in the car, just habit. The boys at the beach. Tom and his high school football jersey. Me and Amanda from their wedding, her arm around me like we were real family. That was when the panic started to creep in. Not just about the cold, not about the hunger twisting in my stomach, but about how fast it all fell apart. I kept whispering to myself, it's temporary. He just panicked. It's not like him. Because I needed to believe that. I needed to believe that the boy who used to cry when I missed a school play, the one who called me when he had his first breakup, voice shaking like he was 7 again, that he wouldn't really leave me out here like this. Maybe Amanda didn't know how bad it was. Maybe she thought I had options. Maybe. But deep down I already knew. When someone wants to help you, they make room. They pull out the air mattress, shuffle the laundry baskets. They do something. Tom didn't even ask if I had enough gas in the car. Didn't offer a blanket. I'd spent my whole life catching him when he fell. And now, when I was the one falling, he didn't even look down. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the shadows stretch across the parking lot and wondered what I had done to become so disposable. And the hardest part, some part of me still hoped. It's not just the cold that cuts. It's the memory of warmth. I keep thinking about the backyard. That spring years ago, Tom was maybe 10. We were grilling hot dogs. Amanda wore a sundress back then, not the expensive kind, just cotton and cheerful. She laughed when I accidentally squirted mustard on the dog instead of the bun. The whole neighborhood came that day. I remember because Tom had made a hand-painted sign that said, "Welcome to our first family barbecue." His handwriting was crooked. He spelled barbecue wrong. I kept that sign for years. He followed me around the yard barefoot and sunburned, tugging on my shirt and whispering, "Can we sleep in your bed tonight if there's thunder?" There wasn't a cloud in the sky, but that's how he was. Always worried about storms that hadn't arrived yet. I told him yes, of course, always. That night, sure enough, the thunder came, and he was already curled up under my blanket, gripping my arm like a lifeline. I rubbed his back until he fell asleep, his feet still dirty from the grass.
It was always me.
When he had nightmares, when he needed lunch money, when he skinned his knee and didn't want Amanda to see him cry, he came to me. So, it didn't make sense how he looked through me like I was nothing, like I hadn't been everything. I'd even handed him that house. 6 years ago, when he and Amanda were struggling, bouncing from apartment to apartment, pregnant again and barely staying afloat, I said, "Why don't you take the house, the one my late husband left me? Start over somewhere steady," I said to them. They hesitated at first, worried it was too much, but I reassured them. It's just a house. You need a home. I helped pack, drove truckloads of baby gear, painted the nursery yellow, gave them the guest room furniture, and bought a secondhand crib off Facebook Marketplace. But now I remember something. I never filed the title change. I filled out the transfer form, but I never mailed it. I told myself I'd do it once they got settled. But life got in the way. Doctor's appointments, Amanda's job search, a bout of shingles that knocked me off my feet for weeks, and then I just forgot. They moved in like it was theirs. Started calling it our place. And I let them. I never corrected anyone because I trusted them. They were my family. I'm remembering all this now, sitting in a parking lot with cramping legs and a wet pillow, wondering how I went from mom to problem. In that moment, something shifted in me. I knew I couldn't carry on like this. By the 4th day in the car, I stopped pretending it was temporary. My joints throbbed every time I shifted. I had taken to parking near a 24-hour laundromat just so I could use the bathroom without getting followed by security. I kept my toothbrush in a plastic sandwich bag. I washed up using wet paper towels and hand soap. I called it making do, but really I was just surviving. That afternoon, I wandered into the church basement on Maple. Not to pray, not yet. I just wanted something hot, something that didn't come from a vending machine. The sign outside said, "Community meal, all welcome." I hoped they meant it. Inside was warmer than I expected. The room smelled like stew and bread, and a little bit like dust. A few long tables were lined up in rows, half filled with people like me. Quiet, tired, hungry in more ways than one. I sat down slowly, knees groaning. A woman with short gray curls and a kind face walked over, holding a tray. She smiled without pity. Just kindness. First time. I nodded. Elena, she said, setting the bowl down. The soup's better than it looks. I smiled tight. I'll take anything warm. She sat across from me, didn't pry, just ate a few bites beside me like we'd done this before. It wasn't until I tried to lift the spoon with my aching hand that I let out a small wince. Your wrist, she said. You all right? Just old bones and a bad week. She tilted her head. Looks like more than a bad week. And maybe it was the warmth or the soup or the silence that didn't push. But I told her, not the whole story, just the shape of it, the storm, the driveway, my son. Her eyes softened, but she didn't gasp. Didn't say, oh no. How could they? She just listened like I was saying something she already knew. You got family near? I shook my head. No one I can go to. You got documents for the house? My spoon froze midair. Why?
She leaned in.
Because I know someone, Miss Harmon, used to be a paralegal, retired now, but sharp as ever. Helps people sort out messes like this. I hesitated. I don't need to sue anyone. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying if that house is still yours, you should know it. And if it's not, then at least you'll stop wondering. I swallowed hard because I had been wondering. I kept waking up in that car thinking about that drawer full of papers I shoved into a manila envelope last year. Deed, insurance, tax slips, old wills, never organized, just shoved away during Amanda's last nesting spree. I remembered thinking, I'll sort it after the baby comes, but I never did. And now I didn't know what I had or what I'd given away. Elena patted my hand gently. Just meet her.
No chatting.
She lives 6 blocks from here. I'll even drive you. I hesitated, not because I didn't trust her, but because part of me didn't want to hope again. I was tired of doors opening only to be slammed shut. But then I thought of that one line, the one I signed on the transfer form but never mailed. I never made it official. I never let go. So maybe, just maybe, I still had something left. Miss Harmon lived in a narrow yellow house that smelled like cedar and peppermint tea. Her living room was cluttered but not messy, just lived in. Books stacked in uneven towers, legal pads half used, a bowl of hard candies by the window that hadn't seen sunlight in years. She wore a navy sweater, thick glasses, and an expression that told me she didn't suffer fools but had a soft spot for the wronged. I don't promise miracles, she said, motioning for me to sit. But I do promise the truth. Fair. I nodded. We sat at her kitchen table. I pulled out the manila envelope I'd rescued from the bottom of my trunk, still damp at the edges. I hadn't opened it in over a year. The paper clips were rusted. The corners curled, but the documents were still legible. Deed, will, property tax receipts. A homeowner's insurance policy I hadn't realized had lapsed. Ms. Harmon adjusted her glasses and flipped through slowly, methodically. Her lips pressed into a line as she skimmed the deed. Then the second page. Her finger tapped a spot near the bottom. Here, she said, your husband's name and yours. Joint ownership with rights of survivorship. I leaned in. She looked up. Which means when your husband passed, the house legally became yours fully, automatically. But I hesitated. I filled out a title transfer when Tom and Amanda moved in. Filled out, she echoed. But filed? No, I admitted. I was going to, but I never made it to the courthouse. They got busy with the baby, and I thought. My voice trailed off. She nodded once. Then legally, that house still belongs to you. Your name is the only one on this deed. No filed quitclaim. No transfer of ownership, just talk. And talk doesn't hold up in court. I blinked. It didn't feel real. They've been living there for almost 6 years, I murmured. Doesn't matter. Possession isn't ownership. Not in cases like this. Not without tenancy agreements or title changes. I sat back in my chair, the weight of that one sentence sinking deep into my chest. I still owned it. After everything, after being left on a porch in the rain, after nights in the car, after Amanda's silence and Tom's shrug, I still owned that house. Miss Harmon didn't gloat. She just pushed the papers gently toward me. Do you want to take it back? That question cracked something open in me because I didn't know the answer yet. What I wanted, what I deserved, didn't feel like the same thing. I looked down at the rusted paperclip, at the half-torn envelope, at my own name printed clearly next to my husband's. My name, not Amanda's, not Tom's.
Mine.
Miss Harmon stood slowly. There's a legal aid office downtown. Pro bono housing advice. I know a lawyer there. Good one. Young, hungry. You bring these papers, he'll know what to do next. I didn't move. I just sat there staring at the one thing I hadn't expected to find after all this time. Leverage. After months of being made small, dismissed, discarded, I still had something they didn't know I had.
Proof.
Miss Harmon placed a hand gently on my shoulder before she walked me to the door. They took advantage of what you gave, not what you owed. Remember the difference. Outside, the wind had died down. The sky was pale and quiet. I stood on the porch a long time holding that envelope like it weighed more than it used to. Because maybe it did. The legal aid office sat between a pawn shop and a payday loan place. Fitting, I thought. All the places people go when they've run out of options. I almost didn't walk in. I stood outside for a full minute, one hand on the handle, the other gripping that manila envelope like it was a flotation device. Because once you start asking the law to back you up, there's no more pretending things might fix themselves. Inside, the air was stale and fluorescent. A woman behind a chipped desk handed me a clipboard. Have a seat. He'll be with you shortly. 10 minutes later, a man called my name. He couldn't have been more than 30. Skinny brown hair, nervous energy in his hands. His name tag said, Aramos. We sat in a small office with a wobbly table and mismatched chairs. I handed him the envelope, watched his eyebrows rise as he flipped through each page. You still have the original deed? He asked. I never gave it away, I said. He nodded. And you never filed a title transfer, no quitclaim, no power of attorney, nothing signed over officially? No. He leaned back in his chair and tapped his pen. Then you're the legal owner of that house. Full stop. The words should have made me feel triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. What happens if I take it back? I asked. My voice was quieter than I meant. He folded his hands. They'll get a notice. 60 days, maybe 90, depending on local law. If they contest it, it could go to mediation. If they refuse to leave after the deadline, you'd file for possession. The court almost always sides with the rightful owner, which would be you. But they live there. I said, my grandkids sleep there. They built their life on it. He didn't flinch, just said gently, and you gave them that chance. You helped them build. But they shut the door on you when you needed a hand. You're not taking anything. You're reclaiming what they treated like garbage. I stared at a crack in the linoleum floor. Does it make me heartless? I whispered. He shook his head.
No, ma'am.
It makes you human. I let the silence stretch. For years, I told myself I was doing what good mothers do, giving, helping, caring. I held them up so long, I forgot what it felt like to stand on my own. But when I needed them, they didn't just look away. They locked the door. You don't have to decide today, the lawyer said, sliding the papers back toward me. But just know if you want to do something about this, the law's on your side. I took the papers, slipped them back into the envelope like they were fragile. I'll think about it. He smiled. That's all I ask. Back outside, the sun was bright enough to make me squint. I didn't go back to the car right away. I just stood there on the sidewalk, envelope in hand, watching the world pass like I'd just been handed 2 lives. The one where I stayed silent and forgave what shouldn't be forgiven. And the one where I finally stopped making excuses. One of them would break me slowly. The other might hurt like hell at first, but it might also set me free. When I got back to the car, I sat there for almost an hour watching the wind lift dead leaves across the sidewalk. But something in me hesitated, not because I didn't want the house back, but because I still wanted to believe it wasn't necessary. I kept imagining Tom calling me out of the blue, saying, "Mom, we messed up.
Come home."
I imagined Amanda's voice softer for once, asking if I needed anything, offering to bring the kids by. I imagined them remembering who I was, what I'd done. But that call never came. And every time I checked social media on that same dusty library computer, I saw Amanda posting pictures of the kids with captions like, "Family is everything." While I sat 2 miles away eating canned soup and hoping my coat wouldn't mildew from the rain, I wasn't family anymore.
Not to them.
So, I drove to the lawyer the next morning. Same tired receptionist with the chipped nail polish. But this time I didn't flinch. When she asked, "Here to follow up?" I nodded. Yes, I want to move forward. When I sat down in the back room with Mr. Ramos, the young lawyer, I slid the deed across the table like it weighed 100 pounds, but I didn't hesitate. He opened his laptop, fingers flying across the keys. "You want to send the 60-day notice formally?"
Yes. His voice softened.
"Are you sure you're ready for what that sets in motion?" I wanted to say no, that I wasn't ready, that some stupid part of me was still hoping Tom would call and say, "We didn't mean it. Please come back." But that call hadn't come, and it wouldn't.
So I just said, send it.
He printed the letter on official letterhead, folded it with clean, practice movements, and slid it into an envelope. Not rushed, not hesitant, just certain. "This goes by certified mail," he said. "They'll sign for it. That starts the 60-day clock. After that, if they haven't left, we can begin the possession process." I stared at the envelope in his hand. My son's name printed neatly next to Amanda's. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel bad. It just felt necessary. He stood to drop it in the outgoing legal bin. I almost told him to wait, but I didn't because this time someone else could carry the weight. This time, I wasn't fighting alone. After the office, I walked to the library across the street. Just wandered. Let my fingers skim across the spines of books I used to love. Gardening, recipes, memoirs, things that once felt like me. I didn't sit down. I didn't check email. I just needed the hush of it. The way libraries carry your grief, without asking questions. Outside in the parking lot, I finally let myself exhale. The notice was sent. Legally, officially, irrevocably sent. And yet, part of me still whispered, maybe they'll apologize. It had been almost 2 weeks since I stood on that porch, suitcase still in the trunk. 3 weeks since Tom told me to sleep in my car. Since Amanda walked away, like I wasn't the woman who rocked her babies to sleep while she found herself at yoga and wine tastings, but the kids, they were still mine. At least I thought so. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't even get out of the car at first. I just parked across from the elementary school and waited until recess, hoping for a glimpse, hoping they'd be wearing those neon green jackets. I bought them last Christmas. At 10:37 a.m., I saw them, chasing each other across the blacktop, laughing, faces red from the cold. My heart thudded against my ribs like it wanted to leap out of my chest and go to them. I cracked the window just a little, just enough to hear their laughter drift through. That sound had always steadied me. Ever since they were born, it was my anchor, my reason. I didn't plan to get out, but I did. I stood across the fence, hands in my coat pockets, not waving, not calling their names, just watching. They didn't see me at first, but when they did, when the older one pointed and squinted, my throat caught. He smiled. For one bright second, he smiled. Then Amanda appeared like she'd been summoned by a thread of tension I didn't even feel until it snapped. She was standing near the far gate, phone in one hand, coat buttoned too tight like it was holding her together. When she saw me, her face darkened instantly. She walked over fast, faster than I remembered. She could move. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. Not loud enough for the teachers to hear, but sharp enough to sting. I swallowed. "I just wanted to see them." "You don't get to confuse them," she snapped. "You don't get to show up here and act like you're still part of this." I flinched. "They're my grandsons and they're fine," she said. My body went still. I didn't cry. Not then. I just nodded once. Small, like I was agreeing with a sentence that hadn't finished. Amanda turned, called to the boys. They hesitated. The younger one looked back at me, confused. His mouth moved like he wanted to ask a question, but Amanda clapped her hands once, sharp, and they ran to her. She didn't look at me again. She just walked them across the playground, her hand tight around the older one's wrist, like she was pulling him out of a burning building. I stood there long after they disappeared behind the school doors. long after the other kids filed back inside, long after the cold made my fingers stiff. That night, I cried harder than I had since the storm. Because this wasn't just rejection, it was erasure. And the only thing more painful than being forgotten is being edited out while you're still alive. I went back to my car, pulled the envelope out of the glove compartment, and held it like it might bite me. Then I said out loud to no one, "Okay, no more waiting." The letter reached them 2 days later. That Thursday, I went back to the church basement, the same place Elena had taken me to eat soup and breathe. But this time, it was for the support group. Mostly women, some older, some not. A few with canes, one in a wheelchair. All of us carrying the same egg, wearing it in different ways. The meeting wasn't fancy, just folding chairs in a circle and lukewarm coffee in a styrofoam cup. But when it came my turn to speak, I surprised myself. I mailed it, I said, the notice for them to leave. A couple of heads nodded. No applause, no gasps, just quiet recognition. One woman with silver braids leaned forward. "And how do you feel?" I stared into my coffee like I finally made a decision for myself, even if they hate me for it. Another woman murmured, "They already treated you like the enemy. All you did was accept the role." That stuck with me. When I got back to my borrowed cot in Elena's friend's garage apartment, my phone buzzed. A number I knew by heart, even though it hadn't called in weeks. Amanda. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text came in. "Nice try. The house is ours. Stop embarrassing yourself."
Just like that.
No fear.
No remorse.
Just that same smug, polished cruelty I'd heard on the playground. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I placed the phone on the counter, walked to the window, and opened it wide. The air outside smelled like pine needles and cold soil. Real things, things that didn't lie to your face. I didn't reply. The wheels were turning now. They wouldn't stop just because Amanda scoffed in a text. They wouldn't stop because Tom decided to look the other way. This wasn't family drama anymore. It was legal. And when you're someone like me, someone who's been told her whole life to be the bigger person, to keep the peace, to let it go, there is something quietly victorious about letting the law speak for you. Because this time, I wasn't knocking on a door that wouldn't open. I was building my own. The courthouse smelled like dust and ink and everything being barely held together. I sat in the hard plastic chair outside the clerk's office, papers in my lap, heart ticking faster than the second hand on the wall clock. When my number was called, I stood too fast, my knee locked up for a moment, reminding me I wasn't 30 anymore, but I walked unsteady. I handed over the forms. The clerk, a young woman with chipped green nail polish and eyes that didn't miss much, skimmed through each page. She didn't smile. She didn't nod, just flipped the pages and said, "You'll get your hearing date by mail. Should be about 3 weeks." I wanted to ask, what are the chances they'll fight it? What if the judge believes them? What if they say I'm just a bitter old woman with no place to go? But I didn't, because none of it changed the facts. The deed had my name. The notice had their names. The file had been stamped. And that meant the story had changed. They weren't doing me a favor anymore. They were staying on borrowed time. By the time I walked back out into the sunlight, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. The kind you get when your body realizes it just did something brave. I stopped at the bench outside and sat, letting the cold seep up through the concrete and into my bones. And I laughed just once, quick and low, because I had spent the last 2 months being cast as a helpless burden. I slept in my car, was told to leave playgrounds, was treated like a ghost in a house I paid for, and now the court had entered my name into the system. That house wasn't just theirs with a story behind it. It was mine with a paper trail. Later that afternoon, I made the mistake of opening social media. Amanda had posted a photo from a resort. Palm trees, pool chairs, sparkling cocktails. Her caption read, "Homeowner's life, red heart. Finally getting the peace we deserve." And in the corner of the photo, half cropped out, sat Tom shirtless, drink in hand, sunglasses on, like life was one long, well-earned nap. They weren't scared. Not yet. They didn't know what was coming. Still thought I was the same woman who brought casseroles to their door and apologized when I cried. I stared at that photo, my thumb hovering over the screen. For a split second, I imagined writing a comment, "Enjoy it while you can." But I didn't because power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't gloat. It waits. They thought they had time, that I'd given up, that their silence was victory. The next 3 weeks I spent in place. Elena recommended a little one-story place with ivy along the porch rail and flower pots that had seen better days. The yard smelled like damp earth and rosemary, and the screen door creaked before I even touched it. Her name was Mrs. Grady, widowed, 68, wore her gray hair in a loose bun, and kept a cane leaning by the door, but barely used it. "You, Evelyn?" she asked, stepping aside without waiting for an answer. "Rooms in the back, bathrooms down the hall, rents due monthly, but we don't fuss here. You do your part, I do mine." That was it. No interview, no judgment, just space. The room had a twin bed with a faded quilt and a lamp shaped like a lighthouse, a dresser, a tiny window, no TV, no Wi-Fi, just quiet, and for the first time in weeks, it was enough. Those 3 weeks went by in a blink. Mrs. Grady was super sweet. We talked about life every day, and for once, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own story. The courtroom was colder than I expected and smaller. Not like TV. No grand declarations, no banging gavels, just tired walls, a dusty flag, and a judge with reading glasses halfway down her nose. I wore my best blouse, the same one I wore to Tom's wedding. I remember how Amanda hugged me that day, all teeth and perfume whispering, "You're the reason this is possible." I guess she meant that differently now. Tom showed up late. He walked in looking confused, or maybe pretending to be. Slacks, no tie, a folder under his arm like he thought bringing paper made him look official. Amanda wasn't with him. Of course not. She never did the dirty work herself. When the judge asked our names, he introduced himself with that fake polite tone I used to hear when he called the cable company. "I'm here on behalf of my family," he said. "We've lived in that home for 6 years. We were under the impression it was a gift from my mother." The word gift made something in my stomach twist. She looked to me. "Mrs. Marks, do you dispute this?" I stood. My voice didn't shake. "I do. I never filed a transfer. My name is on the deed. I have the original plus confirmation from the title office." I handed it over. Every page in order, every signature dated. The last one, the trust transfer. The judge flipped through silently. Tom cleared his throat. She said, we assumed. She offered it when we were struggling. I took care of things around the house. We paid some bills. It wasn't like we were freeloading." I wanted to laugh. Bills. I covered their groceries for a year. Paid the car note twice when Amanda's hours got cut. Replaced their HVAC out of my own retirement account. All while they posted family selfies and called me a blessing online. I let the silence stretch until the judge finally said, "Intentions don't hold up in court, Mr. Wilkinson. Deeds do, and your mother's name is the only one on record. Legally, this house has never changed hands." Tom shifted, his jaw clenched, his hand curled around that useless folder. "But our kids," he started. She held up her hand. "This is not about parenting. This is a property matter. You've had 60 days notice. Legally, your occupancy has expired. I am granting full possession to the legal owner." Then she added, "Without ceremony, you have 30 more days to vacate." It was over in 6 minutes. I sat back down. My knees finally relaxed. My heart didn't. Not yet. Tom didn't look at me as he left. He just walked fast, stiff, like his whole body was made of shame and disbelief. I didn't follow. I didn't speak. The courtroom emptied slowly. The clerk gave me a form to sign, and a half-smile that felt like solidarity. Outside, the sun hit my eyes like a flashbulb. I stood still because it had happened quietly, cleanly. And for the first time since that night on the porch, I wasn't on the outside anymore. I didn't win because I yelled louder. I won because I endured. And now they had 30 days to learn what it feels like to be asked to leave a home you thought would always be yours. The only difference is I never slammed the door. I just locked it with my name. He showed up 5 days later. I knew it was him before I even opened the door. Tom stood there red-faced, breathing hard, like he'd run up a flight of stairs. His coat was unzipped, hair messy, eyes wild, not from tears. No, those would have been too honest. But from panic, from anger dressed up as desperation. "You're ruining our lives," he snapped.
No.
"Hello."
No. How are you?
No acknowledgement that he hadn't spoken to me in over a month. Just that "you're ruining our lives." I didn't answer. Not right away. I stepped back slightly, leaving the door half open, one hand still on the frame. I didn't invite him in. I didn't even gesture. I just looked at him. He took it as permission to keep going. "Amanda's freaking out. The kids are scared. We don't have anywhere to go." "Mom, you really think this is fair after everything we've done for you?" I raised an eyebrow. "Everything?"
He scoffed.
"Don't play dumb. We let you live with us for years." "No," I said, calm and flat. "You lived in my house for free. I gave you food, help with bills, babysat every time you asked.
You didn't let me stay.
You let me be useful, until I wasn't." He looked thrown for half a second. Then he tried again. "We have kids, Mom. You're seriously okay with putting them out on the street?" That one cut. He knew it would. But I didn't flinch. I kept my voice even. "They're not being put out. They're being moved out. There's a difference. And the reason they're in this mess is because you two thought kindness was ownership." His face twisted. "You really want to die alone in that house? That's what this is about." I shook my head.
No, Tom.
I want to live with my dignity intact, and I couldn't do that in a home where I wasn't welcome. He stepped forward, just half a step, but I saw it. That edge, that instinct to intimidate, to guilt me into undoing everything. I didn't back up. I didn't blink. "I begged you that night," I said. "Do you remember? I stood on your porch, soaked through, shaking. Asked for 2 nights, just until I figured things out." He didn't respond. I took a breath, let the silence settle, "and you told me to sleep in my car." His jaw worked, but no words came. I stepped back and gently began to close the door. "Don't come here again," I said. "Next time, send your lawyer." He looked stunned, like the air had left the hallway. "You're choosing this?" he said, voice smaller now. "You're choosing being alone." I paused just before the latch clicked.
No, Tom.
"I'm choosing myself. For the first time in a long, long time." Then I closed the door, locked it, and for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel cruel. I felt clear. They'd mistaken my silence for surrender, my love for permission, my patience for weakness. Not anymore. This wasn't revenge. This was resolution. A month later, I stood on the porch of my own house once again. It clinked softly as the eviction officer stepped up beside me, clipboard in hand. "Do you want to go inside, ma'am?" he asked gently. "No," I said. "This is where I need to be." The SUV was already in the driveway. Amanda stood with the back hatch open, arms crossed, face hard, her lips pressed into a line so thin it barely existed. Tom was in the house, dragging boxes out in silence. The kids weren't there. Thank God for that. The officer didn't have to say much. The order had been posted for 2 days. This was just the last piece, the physical move out, the legal closure. I'd followed every step, every form, every deadline, not one corner cut, not one threat made. I watched them move box after box. My plates, my photos, the throw blanket I crocheted one winter when the heater was acting up. Amanda set it down like it was trash. She looked up. Eyes met mine. "You happy?" she hissed. "You got what you wanted?" I didn't answer, because it wasn't about wanting this. It was about needing to survive. Tom stepped out next, sweat on his brow, frustration in every movement.
He wouldn't look at me.
They had emptied the house the same way they had emptied me. Like I was temporary, like I was a placeholder for a life they thought they deserved more than I did. They packed it all up. Their self-importance, their entitlement, their smug captions and wine night pity parties. All of it stuffed into cardboard. Amanda passed me again, close this time. Closer than she needed to be. "Hope you enjoy dying alone in that dusty old house," she said under her breath. "That's all you'll have left." I turned to her slowly and calmly replied, "Better alone than used." She blinked. I don't think she expected a response. Not from the woman who used to stay quiet. The one who watched their kids and covered their bills and cleaned their fridge when they left it to rot. The one who begged on a porch for shelter. That woman was gone. The SUV door slammed. The officer gave a small nod. "They're off the property. Do you want to go in now?" I didn't move yet. I watched their taillights as they turned the corner. No one waved. No one looked back, but I didn't need them to. I reached for the key. My key. And stepped into the house. The air inside was still, some drawers open, one closet left half full, dust on the baseboards as if even the walls were tired. I walked through slowly, touching nothing, just breathing, just feeling. The living room still held the outline of their couch in the carpet, but it was empty now. Every trace of them gone, except me. I was still here. I walked to the kitchen, touched the counter where I used to roll out pie crusts for Tom's birthday. I stood in the hallway where Amanda once hung family photos. The frames were gone now, but the nail holes remained. Proof of what once was, of what would never be again. Then I climbed the stairs slowly, carefully, and opened the bedroom door. Sunlight poured through the window, like a quiet kind of blessing. If Tom ever calls again, I might answer, I might not. It depends on the tone, the words, the humility. But I know one thing. I won't be returning to that version of me ever again. The one who stayed quiet while others took. The rocking chair squeaks. A bird lands near my foot. I lean down and scatter crumbs from the toast I ate earlier. Let the garden stay full even as I